is that typically, and this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is the majority of the demos that you guys are involved in are, like you said earlier, the tail end of a wood CAD-CAM demonstration. And that may include nesting. It may include some optimizing as well. So having a simple demo at the end of that, what may be a longer presentation in wood CAD-CAM, and emphasizing that wood CAD-CAM has done all of the work, a simple demo would be a good choice for that. However, if you do get a little bit more savvy customer and he's starting to ask you a few questions, what can you do, what you can't do, can you do this, can you do that? I'm hoping to address some of the typical questions that we encounter so that you're able to address these, and whether you're actually able to illustrate that in the demonstration, being able to confidently say yes or no may be enough to get you on to the next stage of your meeting with that customer. One of the things that I want to start out with is that you guys have a wood CAD-CAM inch and a metric user directory. We don't want to do any type of demonstrations that may require a little bit of tweaking and tuning of a parameter or so that would disrupt your ability to demonstrate following your wood CAD-CAM demos. That's paramount. We don't want to cause a problem there. So what I have been working on is a user directory that is aside from this, so that if you wanted to experiment, you wanted to change the screens, you wanted to adjust some of the settings, you're going to have a directory that you can do so confidently in and not have to worry about compromising your wood CAD-CAM work. So I'm going to start with some of the basics, and the way that we're able to give you a different user directory is that we're able to set up multiple user profiles. So right now I am in the wood CAD-CAM inch user folder, and if I select the one that I will polish after we're done with this and send it out to you guys, you'll be able to have this a user directory. Now this is a directory that is self-contained. It does not share data with, it does not overwrite any parameters or settings in your wood CAD-CAM folder. So this is a zip file you'll get, you expand it, and now you'll have a new user option when you go under your CutRite user profiles. You'll have a new one. Okay, so simple enough. Given that, if you want to, if you're concerned that you might disrupt the settings in this folder, you can always back it up before you do anything that you think might challenge the integrity of this user folder. So if you do a backup, you back up the current user. What you're able to do is you'll create a backup folder that goes to a particular path, and you can change that path or set it. You can rename the backup and say this is CutRite RSA, and we'll just call this the original. And when you save that, you'll be able to restore from that zip file. So now we're done. So I have an easy way to revert back to the original set. Okay? And to do so, just simple as restore. It looks into the backup path, and I'm able to open that up. You can change the path. It's in backup, and my file will be in that folder, and I just restore. All right. So don't worry about that. But it is important that you do change from your wood CAD-CAM user directory before you do a different type of demo that is, more of a standalone, because we're going to have this set up where you can do some of the common tasks that you might be asked to show. Okay? All right, so aside from that, I want to go through some of the basics. I know that we have some people who are more experienced and some people are still on the learning curve a little bit. And I wanted to go through just real quickly is that how CutRite is established is that it starts pretty much with system parameters, and these are basically your setup, your global setting, your profiles. Your keys are fully activated, so if you wanted to change the modular level of your software, if you wanted to, someone were to ask you the difference between Pro and Standard, you could then turn around, make this adjustment, and you would see the differences between Pro and Standard and be able to show that. You may want to have a conversation that includes a lot of off-cut work, or maybe someone with an IntelliStore would need to see some stock control features. So you're able to activate that module. If you turn it off, you're not, it grays out the menus, or it completely eliminates most of the menus for what you're not using. So you're able to keep it nice and clean with the way you see that. So you also have the path settings, and if you're not sure where your data is importing from, you can come here and check the path for import data, and if you want to modify that, that's an easy modification that you can do quite easily. Then you have certain types of rules of how the optimizer works, processes cut list, how it creates and data, what data it needs to, you want to be created. So the less you have, the more files you're generating. You also have one of the options that's very important to the way that you do your wood CAD/CAM demo is that you're able to create an environment where the software will divide a part list so that you can send certain parts to the nesting program and certain parts to the optimizer, and that's controlled on the dividing parts page. But you're already set up in wood CAD/CAM, and this is already set up so that you can do something just as similar in that as you do in wood CAD/CAM. It's going to look just a little bit different, and I intentionally made it a little bit different so that when you see it, you will recognize that you happen to be in the wrong user directory. You'll recognize, oh, wait a minute, maybe I should go to my user profile and go to the different folder. And how you handle offcut. So this is one of the initial settings in here. You have an inch and a metric setting. This user directory is in metric because I'm taking advantage of some of the hours of development in data that Bass Software has done for us. So I've got some data that is pre-built, and this will be something that we can expand into should you ever decide to experiments with the parametric part and product library. You'll be able to activate the modules and take a look at that if you're ever curious. Okay, so moving right along, I usually just never save changes when I leave the user profile unless I mean to. And then we'll have the board library. Now the board library is the database of your sheet goods, and that you can view this in multiple fashions. I generally like to do what we call the two-tiered display, where you have your material codes, and underneath each material codes, you have your different board sizes. So that's what we're looking at here. Okay, you can also take this to a boards only view. And where are the boards? So that is your board library. Now from there, let's just go take a look at a part list real quick. Now a part list is just a list of parts that you need to cut, and this is what you're hoping to provide. In the part list is what you require. There's also a section called cutting list. Does anybody know the difference between a part list and a cutting list? Okay, a cutting list would include things like edge banding. So if you had one of your edging codes was to cut laminate, you could have that automatically added to the cut list, so that once you ran through the individual parts, which were resized as you choose or not resized, it would also have laminate strips. It would have lip pieces like maple lip added to there. You'll also see that if you're doing grain matches parts and you're doing what we call the grain match template, where it basically cuts a blank and then it puts that blank in a separate program on the panel saw to divide just the blank. You have the choice of whether you want to mix it into the patterns so that it's not obvious that you're cutting grain match templates, or if you want something a little bit more obvious like a template that has to be sanded, stained, and finished, and then you bring it back and cut to the finished sizes. Now you could set your grain matching up to do either or a combination of the two. So that is what we have for our cut list. Now, another access that you have is your board list. Now, a board list is different from a board library. This is your working list of sheet goods, because in here you will see that this is what the optimizer found when it looked to the board library to match the different material codes that you have in the part list. So it's, in this example, you see that we've got some 3/4 maple, we've got some offcut. Offcut is designated by the X leading character, and we see that this is a remnant of a previous optimization. So, and we also have two different sizes of 1/4 inch white melamine one-sided. So this is a list that you can edit. You can go in and you can change, should be set to yes in the library, making notes of things to adjust, is that you can go in and eliminate. You can go here and edit, sort by the material code, and then come down and eliminate anything that has your offcut pieces. So if you are in the middle of a job and you decide you don't want to use offcut pieces when you're doing your optimization, you can come in and delete those out. If you are working with a material that you know has a zero quantity or not enough material, and that's one of the things the optimizer will do for you, is it will caution you that you do not have enough material to run this optimization. You can edit the board list on the fly, push through your results, and then order material from whatever results it provided for you. So this, the kind of basic stuff. Are you guys with this, or stop me if you have any questions? So, all good? Okay. All right. So I'm going to come back to the part list. And here we have our a list of parts. This is a list of cabinets. I have doors, we have spreaders, adjustable shelves, we've got shelf parts, just a pretty decent little list of parts. You may want to work with something a little smaller. I've had some working toward the simple aspect with someone who's new to optimizing, is sometimes I may just have one cabinet in a part list and just focus on what one cabinet would look like in the optimizer. When we're here, there are some defaults, so that if you start a new list, we can have it set up where the parameters will automatically populate the most common the optimizer I use. So here you can go in and say, okay, well, my typical optimizing parameter that I want to work with will be the standard optimizer. And if I have one saw that I work with, I can go ahead and default to that. Or if I have multiples and I just happen to be the person that optimizes for one type of the nesting program, or for the optimizer, I can set this up where it eliminates having to re-enter redundant data. Okay, so a part list has a global field, and you're probably used to using this in that whenever you do a nesting program through Wood CADCAM, and you want to have some parts that nest and some parts that go to the panel saw, you have an information box that asks you, do you want to nest or saw? You provide that answer, and then it will populate this field automatically for every item in that list. So if you were to say that if you answer no in the example, the way it's set up here in this folder is no, would send everything to the optimizer for cutting. If I said yes, everything, but you could then delete this from this field and edit these individually. Or if you wanted to clear these out, you can highlight the field and just press the delete key and clean it back out to no answer. This answer should be defaulted, that if there is no answer in this field, it will come up with a no answer, which you could invert that answer if you wanted to. Do you feel like you do the majority of what you're doing now is nesting, or is it half and half, or what percentage of nesting compared to panel saw optimizing are you doing? Anyone? very little saw, mostly nesting?
I just show both.
You show both. Okay, that's good.
I show
Good.
both too. I'll run one
Right.
optimization with the nest, and then the next one with the saw, and then showing that they could do a mix of both.
Okay, good. That's a good. I'm sure that's a very informative demonstration. And you guys are using grain match templates from Wood CAD/CAM. That's all set up and working perfectly. And in your system, it takes and runs a slightly. It modifies. It actually runs a slightly different template for nesting than it does for the panel saw. So it's then it makes that change for you on the fly. And we're talking maybe I will visit something that's called cutting list rules, because it may help you to understand how Cutrite is making that distinction for you. Is that there are some a feature called cutting list rules that allow you, the user, to set up and make changes to automatic the information in his part list to get that result where it divides that list up for you. So we'll take a look at that. Okay. So typical part list, if you you might want to practice this a time or two, is that you can manually type in a part here. Let's say you wanted a spreader-111, just giving a part a name. If I want to copy from the field directly above, I can hit spacebar, or I can go to this field and I can actually pull a different material from the board library. So I want to make that cherry. Now I can change that material. You can also go to the board library and add codes that don't exist. So if you have something that is new, or someone asks you to type in a material and make it a different color, you can edit your board library here on the fly. Okay. You escape this, it takes you right back to your part list. Okay. Here you give it the size. Now this is earlier. However, if you want to change this and view this in inch, you can adjust the let's see, convert a metric to a decimal or a fractional inch. Let's change this to decimal. If you're more comfortable in that, is that in my experience, when I have used metric data with customers and explained to them that this is in metric, but it's exactly the same if your system is set up in inch. So it'll do that for you automatically. But it's something that you have to set up initially, because it's actually not toggling the files back and forth between inch and metric due to a round off error. Okay, so part list ready to go. You can come in here, add what you want. You can change the fields. You can edit the job name, description. And also, you may find this helpful, is that you may or may not know that you can come in here and you can go in and select which columns are on display when you're in the part list or the cutting list. So if you have fields of information that aren't germane to your conversation, you want to turn them off and simplify this to its absolute minimum, you can turn a lot of these fields off so that they don't show up in this list. But I think this is kind of like the minimum that I would work with. I have description of the part, I have a material, length, width, quantity. I can have an overfield or an underfield, the grain orientation, yes or no, and then some information for labeling, like job name, cabinet name, and then the edge banding information, I want on my label. And if I'm doing grain matching, I would want to be able to see this field as well, so that I can elaborate on how the grain matching works. So if we're looking at grain matching, does anybody, do you typically get in a scenario where you have to show grain matching? And do you have questions that you feel like we need to elaborate on? In the grain matching is, this is coming from in your Wood CAD/CAM folder. This is being provided by Wood CAD/CAM. So it is automatically populating this field. And what you see is that there is a library of different stored grain match patterns in Cutrite. And what it's doing is it's calling the name, okay, so E40, and you can rename these if you want. And E40 has actually it has 3 different parts and a waist piece in the center. So this drawer front is part number 3, and that's how it's selected. So what they do is, and once you set this, if you're importing it, you would see the name of the template, and then you would see the position in the template, which is number 3, and then you'd have :0, because if you have multiple occurrences of this same template, it would start naming them 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 as you go to the cutting list, which is what actually the optimizer runs. So same here, if you go to another template down here, this is a slightly different template with 2-door, 2-drawer, and so on. So this is just kind of curious how often you guys will encounter this, but if you have any questions, or if we find that there are some parts of the software that we need to focus on with more training, which I'm certainly open to, I'll be glad to do some very specific training for you guys if you like. Okay. All right. So basically, here's my part list, and if I'm doing the simple demo, I would import this. I would open this up. I would briefly describe one of the parts that we have in the list, and then I would select my parameters and hit the optimize button. Everything is going to the saw in this example because I left that field blank. Goes through, the part lists are written, the patterns are written, the labels are written. If I'm doing nesting, the nesting program is now complete, and I'm at the review stage. Now the reports that you see here are configurable. If you wanted to change the colors, the fonts, if you wanted to add or delete fields from that report, you're able to do so. Excuse me. It's something that you can spend a tremendous amount of time doing if you're inclined. But also you may want to note, but that I'm not sure if you're aware, but in this example, what we've got is we are looking at the print. We're looking at the view screen. We also have a print view, which can be configured completely differently. So if you wanted to have the view screen where you could scroll left and right and look at all of the information boxes, the job name, the wiki program name, and all that, you could do so. However, if you wanted to print it out, you may have lesser information that you want to be able to circulate through the shop, that they're not interested in all the information the front office may be interested in. So once you're here, you can go in and edit these. There's actually, you can create like bar graphs and pie charts in here. I think we get off of the simple demo track when we start looking at those things. But if you feel you have the need, it's a little bit of window dressing, eye candy that may appeal to some of our customers. Okay, so moving right along. I would not go through the entire list of all of the different summaries that you have available. I would focus on a few key. The management summary shows me that we're producing 174 parts from 20 boards. We're doing this in 25 patterns. 2 of those are head cuts, and you have your waste percentage as well too. So you've got your cost, in fact, cost and time available to you on the screen. So this is like a snapshot of what your job looks like. Part summary. This would be a breakdown of the parts that we have and what we've optimized. Here I can see the CNC program names, the number of parts, and over or under if I am doing the type of cutting that allows me to cut extra parts or undercut parts because I have a modest inventory of parts to draw from. So, another interesting summary might be your board summary. Here we see the different sheets that are being used, some of the offcut. You see that in this particular job, Cut-Rite is retrieving offcut from the board library and reusing that. And the reason that it's doing so is that the parameter that we selected is enabled to do so. If you're working with someone, and over the years I've had a lot of mixed reaction when it comes to offcut. Some people think it is the greatest hope of their money making ability is to retrieve this inventory and reuse it. And then about another 40% of the people you talk to can't imagine that the solution is as simple enough for them to be able to use. So they wind up being conveniently surprised whenever they see a software that can retrieve it. And once the panel saw produces a label for that offcut piece and makes it, they develop a system where they can retrieve it conveniently and efficiently. It's a great way to minimize their material costs. A pattern summary. If I am looking at a job and I'm concerned at how many different material patterns I have, what their times are, do I have any particularly time-worthy patterns, and we do so here. Excuse me. Pattern number 3 probably has a lot of strips in it, and so you can kind of look here and evaluate how many open parts you're working with. And this could be an issue for helping you distinguish what, when I might want to ask a customer about their capacity. One of the things that you have, one of the settings you have to control in professional that you don't have in standard is to be able to limit the number of open parts that are passing through the optimizer at one time. So what that does is it will sort the patterns so that when you're off stacking, if you have a limited off stacking space, you might not have room for maybe 4 or 6 pallets. So that's one of the control points that professional has that standard does not. So the standard optimizer assumes that you're doing a lot of onesie, twosie book heights, and that whenever they're cut, they're typically going to cut 2 or 3 parts, and that they will logically be coming near each other and then move off accordingly, where if you're cutting 40 and 50 item quantity, you need to compile those into the pallets, and then you need to get that pallet complete before you lay down another pallet and start cutting a different part. So you'll also have, from anywhere, I'm pressing the enter key, and this takes me to my pattern preview screen. So each one of these is just a way to scroll through and take a look at the different patterns that are in this job. Now, these parts are color-coded, so as you see here, that the parts that are in blue get one rip cut, one cross cut. If it gets a third phase cut, the optimizer colors it green. Anything that is yellow is a part that belongs to a template. And if you have the professional and you're doing overcutting, it will turn those red for you. Okay? So you can go through these individually, and as you visit each pattern, you can look at the parts, because if the parts are really small, they don't show up with a description or the size. However, if they are big enough, Sam, we do get that on the display.
Sam, what exactly, yes, when you say it's a template, what exactly are you saying?
Okay, the template. Okay, let me back up again. I will skate back here, and you see that we were talking about the grain match templates. Okay, and this is a grain matching scenario where we can do grain matching on the router. We can do grain matching on the saw several different ways. On the saw, the template was created, and one of its properties was distinguished that it would be 3 parts, but I want one blank. The blank shows up in yellow, and then whenever that part, it assumes that blank goes over for some type of other operation, some type of handling. It may go to a different saw. Maybe they're doing, they may have a reason that these door and drawer front set will be cut in a separate operation. We can also make these templates where they naturally cut the parts and they're contiguous as they should be, but you really can't distinguish that template is, you really can't distinguish that the parts are in a template unless you really recognize them. But this is the way that you can recognize them, is by having it cut blanks. Okay. Does that make sense, Roger? And the
Yeah,
blanks
so basically
will,
what you're saying is you're cutting an oversized part that's going to be cut up into multiple parts, and then the grain would be matching.
exactly. So if I could, can imagine a scenario where if I were hand staining, I would want to stain the whole template so that I would get it the most even color before I cut it, instead of trying to handle each part individually afterwards. Can you, does that make, does that have some practical application?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So if we go back to the pattern preview, now each one of these yellow templates will have its own finished pattern at the panel saw. If I chose to do the template route, there will be a cutting pattern specifically for that template when it calls it back up. Say E41. See the name of the template, and then there will be a separate pattern in the panel saw at the end of the run to cut these doors and drawer fronts into the final configuration. So once they come back to the saw, there's a pattern waiting for these to be run.
Hey, Sam.
Okay. Yes.
Quick question. This is Mark. Since I've updated to 10, and while we're doing this meeting, I have a parts list. And in my columns, I don't have to the optimizer yes or no to nest or saw. Mine is OPT or NEST.
You're correct. You're in your wood CADCAM folder.
Okay.
And the directory that we've got is a separate user profile
Okay.
that I'm going to email to you, so that whenever you get the zip file, it will create a new option in your CutRite system, so that you're not mixing data from your wood CAD-CAM with something you may do as a standalone free run optimizing demo. This will give you some latitude so that you don't compromise your other folder by making changes or rearranging the screens or adjusting your parameter. I'm giving you something I hope that you'll be inclined to experiment with.
In that column, I changed everything to OPT instead of, but I cannot for the life of me get it to create a panel saw cut, optimization. It still does nesting.
And
So
you're putting what? Okay. I think I know where you're at, Mark. If you want to hang on when we're done, I'll be happy to go through that with you. Is this the first run you've made through since you worked with 10, or you've been using it and all of a sudden it doesn't work correctly?
I've done 10 on nesting, and probably I guess I haven't tried to do the panel saw optimization, but for some reason for the life of me, it won't switch.
Okay. Well, does anyone else have an issue with their system not working, or that you know of, or if you have,
so like
I can go into that from here if you like.
A drop-down menu, I can select saw or router, and I can select saw, and in the window it says saw. So I'm assuming that I just hit optimize, save changes yes.
Oh, okay, I think I know where you're at, Mark. I think you're in the part list itself, and you're adjusting the optimizing and saw parameters, where you should be adjusting with your global field under your at your part list. One of your information boxes, if you're at your part list and you see that you can scroll to the right, you'll find a field that says the OPT or nest, I believe it says.
Correct.
that information box for each item in there, if you answer it once globally, it will set everything to nest or saw, depending on if you put OPT or nest. And then it will, once you hit the optimize button, it should pass through, create a new cutting list for you, and then give you some results.
Okay.
Okay, you want to try that a little later, or did that work for you just now?
Well, so I have a cutting list, and I type OPT and hit enter, so it's populated the entire cutting list with OPT.
Okay.
So then
And when you hit
optimize, it says save changes. I say yes.
and you should have cutting patterns.
Oh, now it does say saw. Let's see. It's kind of confusing, but it says saw, but to the left of my screen, I have nesting preview, nesting drawings.
Well, I would have to, there's some things we'd have to look at to distinguish where you're at.
So when I'm showing the cutting,
Now you'll still have this option, even though that you can't eliminate this from the screen, but these are these are clearly optimized patterns here. Under machining tab, you see, even in mine, I have nesting preview, nesting drawings,
but
these are cutting patterns.
Hit one of yours that's patterns. It's just hard for me to understand the difference. I don't have I have a header that says nesting, but I don't have a header that says like saw.
You have machining here? Do you see my screen here where in the left-hand toolbar?
Yes.
All right. If you're looking at the patterns, you should have a pattern preview.
When you look at patterns, does it show both nesting and optimization, or only optimization?
Yeah, you wouldn't see both in the same run.
Okay.
You would see them in the same batch, but not the same run.
So it's either one or the other.
Correct. I'll tell you what, why don't I re-optimize this where it splits the two, and then you can kind of see that, or either we can do it in a wood CADCAM folder, either or. Mark,
Sam, I got a quick question for you. Where is the legend for the color codes? Or whether it's a phase 1, phase 2, or whatever? Just because I've seen those different colors and I didn't know what they were. Is there a legend somewhere?
Yeah, I've seen some data that within our network, I won't say where, it is almost unbearable for me to look at. So I changed these to something a little softer. If you go to the report settings, you have to be on the screen that you want to change, because if I'll change it here for the preview, then I'll also need to change it the pattern, because they can be different. But if you go to the setting here, which is report settings, and you go to the picture, is that you can have a couple different choices. Some of the presets are monochrome, where you have kind of
that's all I needed.
You see that the shading and all that. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
That's all I needed. Thanks.
But okay, you got it.
Yep.
And I like to make my offcut white, so it just kind of is more. It just cues me in on something when I see an offcut piece that's white. Now, one of the powerful features of CutRite that you might want to showcase for your customers would be to go in and edit one of the patterns. And this is quite easy to do, is find something with a little bit of waste in it. And if you double click or go back to the screen, to the previous screen, there was a pattern editor option in the left-hand toolbar. Is now you are in the pattern, and you can select what would normally be waste. You can, like for instance, if you wanted to come over here and duplicate that, select that, and then hit duplicate. It'll put right there, or you can actually select it and insert. Add a part, and if we see that this is, we cancel it. There's a little trick to it. If I want to duplicate this part, I'm going to highlight it so I can see that it's part number 36. Select here, go to and select part number 36 and insert it. It's going to show me that it can put one in the length, one in the width. Or if you want to do something that's not on the list, you can do something similar. You can go add a part, type in just call it toe stock, give it a name, and let's make it 100 millimeters by, and this shows me the length that we have available, 1,784.4 millimeters, 1784.4, and if our trims are set to allow us to do a 0 trim, it will then fill that space with parts. It shows me that I can get 2 in the width and 1 in. So, and that is a different color or different tint, and I can and save that so I can make it even more. So you can keep adding parts into this list and being able to show that you can delete parts. And let me give you an example of that, which I think is quite interesting. Is here we've added parts, but if I were to be working along and saying I've got some material that I'm, like for instance, whatever reason I want to delete this part. Okay. When you leave this job, when you're done reviewing or printing or whatever you're doing here, and you leave this list, the software is going to prompt you and tell you that you have removed some parts and that you can save them into a new part list that you can then repurpose for another cutting or either merge into a job that may follow in the future. So that's an important aspect of the software, is to be able to take parts from one pattern and use them in a different job in the future, or not produce here, so that you have more control over how you handle your panel dividing on your saw. Okay. So once we escape here, we'll get out of the edit mode, and here are the extra parts, and they're colored a different color. And if that's a little bit too bright, I'm going to redistribute this so I get something a little bit more appealing to look at. We'll do something purple. And define the custom colors, something's a little easier to look at if you're standing in front of a computer screen all day. So that is your optimization. Now, let's see, we've done editing, board lists. Okay. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I have some, Sam. What I want to know is why is Cut-Rite better than its competition? What are the 5 elements that if you were in competition with, say, Microvellum, or say Eurosoft, or Artis, what 5 things would you hammer down and show and make sure the customer understood that would separate you from them?
Well, it's when this may sound a bit naive, but the typical reaction that we get is that our customers who are even slightly educated on optimizers, if they've done a little, they've been interesting, they've been shopping, they come to us as the leader of the U.S. market for optimizing. What I would suggest is that when you look at the results from Cutrite compared to other systems, that's where you can distinguish the difference. Now, if you're looking at replacing someone who has an optimizer, one of the things that you can develop within your network to be able to do is to do comparative analysis. If they can send you a PTX file or a CP out file, you can import those into Cutrite, re-optimize them, and show them the difference. And what that typical difference is it does it in fewer patterns, it does it in more book cutting, it will do a better job with yield, and there'll be simpler patterns. You know, a lot of the algorithms that are on the market are really more conducive to nesting, and they don't do well with a panel saw. We've done many studies over the years, and we've just compared to even artists, but cut planer, there was a big difference, but we don't encounter that very often anymore. But I mean, sometimes Cutrite would beat their results by 20% and still produce patterns that ran about 25% faster. So to answer your question, bullet points, I find that the typical conversation is, and it's gotten better over the years, but historically the sale was why optimize at all, period. And that was where most people, that you will affect more people with that, I feel, if you're able to go in and look at some of the results of what they're missing out on if they're not doing any type of optimization. So if you're encountering a raw, relatively new, first-time optimizing customer doing some shopping, you may need to impress on him what he will benefit if he takes on any optimizer. And then I've had a lot of success just saying, if you're doing this as a saw operator, if you are an engineer and your saw is not running from an optimizer, this is what you're missing out on, is that if you're working in a custom environment like a kitchen cabinet shop, or you do a lot of custom work, architectural millwork, you are spending, you're probably going to improve your results in handling material somewhere between 12 to 20%. That's a relatively conservative number. That is not, that is nowhere near a trumped up number either. We've done studies over the years. Jim Wilshart Bath has done a lot of studies, and we've been able to confirm them every time that we've done a study for a customer based on what they would be doing by hand. So in a production environment, you're going to have more book cutting, more repetitive cutting, but you're still going to improve your material control and savings by anywhere from 8 to 15%. So, and the more material you cut, the bigger that number is. And if you're looking at trying to make an impact with a customer and they are aware of the business that they're in and what they spend on materials each year, is to say, okay, well, what did you spend on materials last year? You spent $5 million, what is, 8 to 15% of $5 million in material. There you go. So it's of all the products that we sell, nothing pays for itself faster than the optimizing program. Wood CAD/CAM has this very similar results. It saves on engineering, as you know, but when it looks to a product that is designed specifically to save you time and material, the return is really, for most people, easily within the first 6 to 8 months that they own it. Not only will people be shopping for something to save material? They may be struggling with capacity. And another way that you can approach a customer is, well, what is your pain? What are you trying to improve? What do you need help with? It may be just available cutting time. Is that if they're manually programming that brand new panel saw out there and they're having to type in all these parts, is that if you add an optimizer and you take the programming where it's automated, and that within 15 seconds the patterns that we just looked at are on the machine ready to run, is that he's not going to spend 20 to 40% of his day typing those in. So that's a huge payoff, particularly with the smaller customers, and we're, sometimes we do have to justify return on investment of the software more so with the smaller customers, because they don't see that impact. And it's a great way to do that, is to run a pattern for someone real quick and say, oh, wow, ready to run patterns. And you also eliminate error. Is that I have had at least 10 prospects that I worked with that looked at the optimizer. Yeah, that's neat, but I just really can't afford it. And at least 10 people have called me back within a period of time, 6 months, year and a half, said, I got to have that optimizer, got to have it now, I got to have training. I said, well, okay, I'm glad to hear from you, but what is, can I ask about your sense of urgency? Well, we just cut X number of sheets, the wrong size, and it cost us X number of thousands of dollars. And not only did it cost me the material, now I have to recut it. So I have to spend the time and aggravation to catch up what I have thrown in the trash as far as parts go. Also, being able to sell a customer on the fact that he might need an optimizer so that he can better forecast his custom materials. So if he has to have specific colors for a color, or a very expensive materials, and he doesn't naturally inventory those, running those parts through an optimizer to get an absolute precise account for exactly what number of sheets, and he can also factor in how do multiple sheet stock sizes impact that result as well. That's a great way to sell or justify someone using an optimizer, is that they can trim that. We always order 4 extra sheets for every job that we do. Well, now they can order exactly what they need and whatever safety margin they want above that. In today's information age with Industry 4.0, we're going to probably be looking at labeling these parts. And if you don't have an optimizer, you're not able to really do anything worthwhile labeling a part. So it's paramount to being able to move forward and identify parts as they move around in the 4.0 industry. As well as that, the optimizer will, particularly the Cut-Rite optimizer, will take a look at where the clamps are. It will rotate the material where it gives it a more efficient cut, a better yield. It will help it maximize the off-cut pieces by knowing where it grips the material, and it doesn't produce patterns that the saw operator, and we learned this, is that some of the optimizers that do not have clamp positions, the optimizer does not realize that it has created a pattern where the saw operator will be cutting single narrow strips in multiple cycles. He'll put one strip in, cross-cut it, it kicks it out, puts another strip in, because it doesn't know where the clamps are. Cut-Rite does. And what it will do is it will typically take that sheet, rotate it 90 degrees, and then it will cut the length of the material, and then it will make a third phase cut, cutting that strip down, and save sometimes 60% on that pattern by being able to rotate and cut and strip out, do the rip cut for one blank instead of having to pull those strips back individually.
So Sam, this knows for a non-Holsma saw, it still knows where the clamps are?
Yes, if your machine has clamps, when we output the patterns, it will know that the patterns where the clamps are, and it will lay the patterns out according to what the best cutting is. Absolutely.
So if I'm trying to optimize
and
a
conversely so is that if you're working with a different optimizer and it doesn't know where the clamps are, it assumes that there is an unlimited clamping ability of that program fence. So it may tell me to put 9 or may tell me to put 10 4-inch wide strips and cross cut them in one cycle. And that's where we get complaints from the saw operators, is that they say, every time I get a pattern like this, I have to stop, reprogram it, and duplicate that cross-cut cycle 9 times because I can only clamp one at a time. So he's having to edit his patterns before he runs them, which is not conducive to efficiency, of course. So now if you're looking at that and you're looking at the way that the Cut-Rite optimizer, now the standard optimizer is not as sophisticated. So it's maybe a little more difficult to illustrate some of the points in the comparison with standard because it is looking pretty much for yield only. The SO optimizer does a great job with yield, and if you have a part list that is a yield type part list where there's a lot of onesie twosie stuff, and you run that part list through Pro or through standard, a lot of times you'll get the same result or very similar result. But once you're able to take and you optimize in the third dimension of book height, the professional, if you have the quantity, will far outscale standard or anything else on the market. And we have an upgrade path from standard to pro. So if a customer is new, doesn't know, we've talked to them, we can't figure it out, what to recommend is that you can start with standard and you can upgrade to pro, and there is residual value in upgrading through from standard to pro, and it's easier to learn actually. So if you've got someone who's a little reluctant to take on some technology, they don't have the staff or don't feel like they have the staff, start standard is actually a good option for us to have available if we need it.
Sam, how do we compare to Cabinet Vision's optimizer? What are the advantages of Cut-Rite over the Cabinet Vision optimizer?
I don't have any rigid data to offer you on that, but what I hear very commonly or over the years have heard and seen results-wise is that Cabinet Vision's optimizer lays out very complicated patterns that seem to yield well. It is pushing these parts into complex patterns that really don't improve the yield because they may accumulate on one side of the board, but it really didn't save the full sheet or anything that it can reuse from it. So their nesting program kind of looks more like what you would do with a router. You know, a lot of fourth and fifth phase cuts in it, but it's just overcomplicated and very little benefit from it.
What about the clamping?
And that's my general impression of it.
Excuse me a second here, Raj. I heard Cabinet Vision's using Cut-Rite for optimizing now through Magic Cut.
I've heard that for 15 years.
Okay.
There's someone who's grossly misinformed. They're not using Magic Cut. They're not.
Probably heard it from your New England rep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, I've heard that for many, many years.
I just heard it recently. So actually, you know who I heard it from? Is Tim Parcham, who was at the North Carolina event. Tim Parcham, he was there representing Cabinet Vision at that event. So
that would be news to me, but it would not totally surprise me that news, if it were true, I would not be in the know. But I'd be terribly surprised.
Hey, I sent you a little chat there, Sam. My Cut-Rite doesn't have. You went to change, like, so you could see the colors on the optimization, whether it's second phase, third phase cuts, or what have you. Mine doesn't have the settings. I got file, view, stock, libraries, parameters. but I don't have where the settings turned on. Can you show us where you turn that settings control on?
Okay. Well, what screen are you on? Are you on a summary? You on a different summary?
I'm just on the main screen where it says, import parts, part batch. When
Hey,
you first turn
Sam,
it on.
while you're doing that, can you send me that paper that's showing the list on the CutRite that you were talking to?
Yeah, if you don't mind me polishing it up a little bit. It's got some more information in it that's relative to building products and CutRite. I thought I would make it something simpler with some bullet points so that you can just kind of glance down at it before you talk to someone.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'd like to have that.
You'll get that for sure. Yeah.
And I think what we're going to have to do, because it's already past 7 o'clock, I think what we ought to do is just say this lesson is on optimization and have another one on nesting.
Okay, absolutely. That sounds like a good idea. When's a good time to schedule? We can do another one this week if you like. I mean, or do you want to be a little closer to show date?
Let's just do it next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, okay.
Same time.
Sounds good to me.
And I'll get a copy of this out to everybody.
Next Tuesday is the 4th of July, Raj.
Say that again? Oh, that's
next Tuesday is the 4th of July. Yeah.
Okay, let's keep it on next Tuesday.
Y'all have fun.
Let's do it on the 5th.
I'm in the pool somewhere.
Thanks for telling me that, Bill.
No problem.
Okay, so we're going to do it on next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, okay. I would appreciate if you set up another meeting. That'd be great. A great reminder. Yeah. So, Bill, if you want to change it, you need to be on either the pattern preview or
I got it. I
found it.
Yeah, I was looking for it.
Got it?
I got it. Yeah, I found it. Thank you.
Yeah. Got it.
All right,
okay.
Thanks
now,
for
you do
help,
have
Sam.
parameters at the other. Okay. All right, guys. Well, any questions? Anything that you were hoping to learn that you didn't get exposed to today?
I really need to dig in to find out if Vision does have, if they are using this. If they are, then we need to know. If they're not, then we need to beat them up for not doing it. It sounds like they're
more likely to tell you guys than they are to tell us.
Hey, Sam. This is Greg. Hey, quick question. Can you maybe put a summary together of just the basic differences between, I know there's 3 versions. There's the standard, the pro, and I've also seen the light, which I have no idea what that does or doesn't do. And then also,
I mean, it's there. Now, you have this as well in our brochure, is a breakdown between standard and professional. And what you'll see is that it lists this out very specifically about what you get with professional that you don't with standard. And if we need to go through this list, that would be a great training event as well, is to be able to show the difference and walk through some of the things that you have here, which is, and this is really germane to the struggles that you would have if you are a volume cutter compared to someone who is cutting onesie twosie, is that you're going to have to worry with open part limits so that you're not overflowing your all stacking station with a variety of 20 different parts that need to be accumulated in stacks before they move on to the next operation.
Can you send me that too, Sam? I don't have a copy of that brochure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've probably got this in version 10, but this happened to be just something I had in front of me. The LO is something that if you have someone and they're just maybe using a slider or a vertical, LO would be a good optimizer choice for that. If they're using a panel saw, the SO is probably the best starting point.
Okay, so if they got a manual saw, then the light will just make them patterns?
Yes. If they need to work, particularly if they're working with CADCAM, if they are not working with wood CAD/CAM and they want to start with LO, you're going to have a lot of competition from, $200, $300, $500, $20 optimizers on the internet that will do pretty much the same thing. I don't see that it's got a lot of market value.
Deal with Alan Hoffman about doing a bundle and pushing in the LO because he has a table saw and a budget. So, and the LO also makes labels. So it works in that scenario.
Yeah, they all make labels. They all make off-cut, and they all make part labels in the office.
Okay.
Ron, how about guys? Is there any focus we need to put on the difference between the label PC and the different labeling options that we have? I mean, is that another meeting we could schedule? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? What are the common questions you guys feel like we need to clarify?
What we need to know is why should the guy buy Cut-Rite versus some other optimizer? That's what we need to know. Well, and also along with nesting.
Well, when it comes to rectangular nesting, I haven't heard anyone suggest that they were even close to what Cut-Rite's doing, and I think that maybe if we can get Sean to get Kent Swenson to itemize what he has hit the tremendous improvement he's found in Cut-Rite nesting compared to microbillium, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm aware.
But we did when we first started nesting. And when we first started nesting, we were nothing but rectangular. The true shape nesting was just so green at that point, is that I did some studies for a guy running a water jet, and we were beating his name brand round. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. I'll probably go back through my emails and find it. But we were beating his water jet nesting program by 25%. We actually did the study 3 times. That I just can't believe it. There's no way that my patterns don't look that bad to me. But we went through them, and the least we ever beat was 15%, and he was giving us different part lists every time.
Yeah.
Rectangular is outstanding at Cut-Rite.
I'm going to stop recording right now, Sam, and then we will meet again next Wednesday. And hopefully between now and then you can send me the 2 documents I've asked, and I will get a copy of this video and the 2 documents to everybody that's going to be selling Cut-Rite.
Okay, great. I will